My name is Spencer Mogapi. I'm a journalist working for Sunday Standard, Botswana, and also the Telegraph newspaper. There's a big conversation going on in the country surrounding the Constitution. In fact, it started way ahead of elections in 2019, and almost all the political parties, both in opposition and the ruling party at the time, were agreed that something had to be done surrounding the Constitution. If I were to start, for example, and give you the background, the ruling Botswana Democratic Party was of the view that the Constitution had to be reviewed, and by so, they meant that throw away everything and start afresh. The opposition too agreed, but what they did not agree on is what kind of document would replace the current constitution. So yes, I would say there's a general agreement across the board that something has to be done. One, the feeling is that it has overstayed. Number two, there are those who believe that from the onset it was not really made by Botswana, for Botswana. Botswana really never had ownership of the document. And there are those who believe that over time, not only has it been overtaken by events, but also that the many amendments have basically rendered the whole thing not useless, but something like that. I don't have the figure to say it was amended this many times, but several times, really many times, I would tell you. The latest being when Parliament on its own saw the wisdom to say they were amending the Constitution and barring people from crossing floors, the members of Parliament. They were basically saying, us, members of Parliament, will no longer be jumping from one party to the other without first calling for elections. What they did was to basically say, if you are from the ruling party, you can't go to the opposition without vacating the seat first, wherever you have been elected. Same applies to those in opposition. If you are a member of the Umbrella for Democratic Change today, you cannot just cross the floor to the Botswana Democratic Party being the ruling party without having to vacate your seat and elections being called, fresh elections on your constituents. That was, in effect, the latest amendment to the Botswana Constitution. If you want another example, I would remind you that a few years back, when the state president was still Festus Mogapi, what he did to amend the Constitution, I think it was sections 77, 78, and 79, he appointed a commission which went around the country. It was chaired and headed by Patrick Balopi, a well-known politician and businessman around here, a former minister, basically listening to people across the country, what they were saying, because the biggest issue at the time was that the Constitution was not tribe neutral. In fact, they were saying it promoted one tribe over the other. There was even talk that the Constitution recognized some 8 tribes and not the others. So I remember what happened at the time was there was a big division happening across the country, tribal division, ethnic division. People from what we normally call minorities, even though some of them are not really minorities, wanted really to be recognized by the Constitution. In the end, there was a referendum basically with a question which says yes or no. And the yes, at the time they won, and the Constitution was duly amended under the process. But there were still lots and lots of people who were totally dissatisfied that it did not go far enough. So I'm just giving this as an example to show you how often it has been amended, including in very, very recent times. With this particular one, the big one, as I would call it, the starting point would be for the president to appoint a constitutional commission. That should be a big group of people, including experts, politicians, elders from across the nation, if it is to attract any legitimacy. And then with the help of his cabinet, but also more importantly from civic communities, from the opposition, from churches, and you name it, agreeing on the steps to go about it, what to look for, and then them also with the help of experts drawing the constitution, putting it back to the nation again before it's ultimately endorsed as it would be by parliament itself. So that is roughly how it should be done. How that will happen, I don't know, because the important thing is that there should be ownership of the final document. Everybody should, in the end, be satisfied that I'm not happy, but at least this is a total or near total representation of what I want as a Motswana. Because the Constitution is a basic document. Every other law that is ever made by Parliament derives legitimacy from the Constitution. And if any such law is deemed to be anti-Constitution anyhow or contravening the Constitution, the judges at the High Court or the Court of Appeal would basically throw it away. So it has to be as inclusive as possible. If you take, for example, more modern democracies that came much later, Namibia, their constitutions are really, really progressive in many ways. They also have what we would call Bill of Rights. But also they include third generation rights like Dotsabu, same-sex marriages, which for us it had to be put in by the Court of Appeal to say no. This the Constitution allows, but it's not expressly allowed by the Constitution. And so for many years, same-sex relationships were barred in all formats, you see. So South African Constitution is very explicit. The Namibian Constitution is explicit on. I'm just giving same-sex relationships as an example. There are many other third-generation rights that should really be included either in the Bill of Rights or in the Constitution directly. Some countries, if you take, for example, the United States, which has a much older constitution, is deliberately made difficult to change the Constitution of the United States. Very difficult, and is deliberate. But for other countries, especially in Africa, you would find that Botswana really, I think, has had to observe a constitution for a long time that was really not pleasant to many of the citizens. So if we are going to continue to really be a united country with peace and everything that comes with peace being respected, then we really have to do something that will enhance such unity. And one of the basic things is to make sure that everybody felt that they belong to this country. And the Constitution thing has to be addressed because it is the basic document itself that is causing so much trouble, so much anxiety, not only to those that feel promoted by it, but more especially to those who feel let out. But look, if you take the issue of Baherero, Batswapung, Bakalanga, you name it, in the northwest, there will be Bamvaderu. So they have genuine concerns about the Constitution. But like I'm saying, those are not the only people who feel aggrieved. Even Bakatla, Batlokwa, Bangwakiti, Bangwatu, and you would imagine these are the people who are somewhat promoted, even protected by the Constitution over others. But they have their own grievances, and they are legitimate, and they should be addressed. And the only way to do that is to start afresh. I'll tell you what has hindered the overhaul of the Constitution, including maybe just those who want to amend it piecemeal. I saw it myself when President Mogapi just tried to amend 3 clauses. It almost broke this country apart. So the Constitution is not a joke. It could really go haywire and everything collapse. So whoever would be a president at any given time is going to think many times really to throw away the Constitution and bring something afresh, even as many people want it. Why? Because there are really vested interests, those who want the current scenario to go as it were, the status quo to remain. And they are very powerful. But also they are very rich political elite who are outside and they feel let left outside. They want this thing to be amended. So there are big interests involved here. So it's a big risk politically for any president to retain it. It's a risk, but to change is a much bigger risk because you are basically opening the floodgates of what might collapse the country. So there are big issues. Sometimes, and this happened with Festus Mogapi, I think he was very clever because he tried it early on in his career as president. That is when he still had a big political capital. If you leave it, as I've seen President Masisi do, to a later stage, when you are much weaker as a politician, you don't have a lot of political capital, then you get scared forever to even try. For example, take lesbians and gays. They feel that they must be mentioned in the Constitution because of their peculiarities. They are not. So when you listen to them, they have a genuine case. This is just one example. If you take, for example, some ethnic groups, they feel that, number one, they do not have land, and the Constitution does not guarantee their rights, specifically as it does with other people. There's what is called Ngwato Land Board. Does that include everybody who stays in Ngwato? There's what is called Ngwaketsi Land Board. Does that include everybody? That is why you have Bakhalahadi on that side, up in arms because they feel they are not recognized also. At Khangwa Mangwato, they feel that they are not guaranteed land rights like everybody else. If you go to Bobono, those are people who have serious grievances. So this whole thing of feeling unequal stems all of it from the Constitution. So if it is going to be overhauled, then these issues really have to be addressed in a big way so that everybody would have a reason to believe that they're equal. I've had myself an opportunity on several occasions to meet one-on-one with the late Sekitumile Masire, and I've asked him several times what really was driving the whole thing about the Constitution. And he insisted, and I believed him, and I still do, that when they made the Constitution, foremost, especially on Seretse Khama's mind, was national unity. And he wanted to do everything he could to make sure that the country got independence as one. And that thereafter, nation building was his ultimate goal. And you can see that he really tried. And this is not a perfect attempt by Seretse Khama. No, not by any. There were many flaws. But we have since gone through many phases. Nation building is no longer a big issue. We have achieved that way ahead of many of our African peers. So there are other issues that the country now faces which really have to be addressed, stemming from this particular constitution: language, culture, tribal neutrality, if we can achieve that, but also just equality, not just neutrality, equality. Why, for example, two kids going to a school, should one feel more important than the other? Just simply because of their tribal origins. Why should two kids going to university, one feel that they are more important or they are bigger than the other, just stemming from the ethnic background? I think that's really not, it doesn't add up anymore. But like I'm saying, the forefathers, the founding fathers of this country really had something they wanted to achieve, which they have done in a big way. If you compare where we started and where the other guys who we started with ended up, anybody you can talk about, Mozambique, Namibia, South Africa, they all started on a bad footing at the time. But Botswana was unique in that we went all the way. Everybody striving to achieve nation building. But this has come at a huge cost to other tribes who had to keep quiet all the time. You see, now we have to pay back one way or the other so that they also feel that they are part of the country. I think we really have to embrace constitutional review in any form. We can no longer continue under the current document. It has many flaws. And also you can see that when it is amended by a parliament at the exclusion of the nation, the party that has more members of parliament always does it for their own benefit. That is why they were saying no floor crossing, because they basically were trying to lock and ring fence their advantages ahead of anybody making any other decision. So it should really be open to the nation. And when that happens, I think we should take care of the minority groups. And the minority groups here, I'm not talking only of ethnicity, I'm talking also of the gays, lesbians. I'm also talking of Basaro. Can you imagine Basaro do not have land that they call their own? Does it make sense? Which is why you find Europeans coming here to say, you guys are persecuting Basaro. Because they can't imagine that the first people to be here do not have land that they can call their own. They had the CKGR, which has since they've been removed from. So we really have to address these issues. I'm just giving Basaro as an example, but there are many other tribes that do not have land that they can call their own. If we cannot relate to land as a person, then you're in big trouble.